Friends, thank you for watching my channel. Question number 1. When was William Wordsworth born? Option A, April 7, 1770. B, April 7, 1771. C, April 23, 1770. D, April 23, 1771. Option A, April 7, 1770 is the right answer. Points to be noted. Wordsworth was born on April 7, 1770 in Cockermouth, Cumberland, in the northwestern England known as the Lake District. His father was a legal representative. He was the second of 5 children in his family. Dorothy Wordsworth, a poet and diarist, is his younger sister for 1 year, to whom he was close all his life. Question number 2. What was the amount of money Raisley Calvert left to William Wordsworth through his will? Option A, £900. B, £1,900. C, £400. D, £950. Option A, £900 is the right answer. Points to be noted. Raisley Calvert, a young friend of William Wordsworth, left him a legacy of £900 through a will when he died in 1795. This amount freed Wordsworth from his financial worries and allowed him to devote himself entirely to writing poetry. To the Memory of Raisley Calvert is a poem written by Wordsworth in memory of Raisley Calvert, in which he expresses his deep gratitude and affectionate remembrance for Calvert's generosity and friendship. It was included in Wordsworth's poems in 2 volumes published in 1807. Question number 3. What was the title of William Wordsworth's first published work? Option A, An Evening Walk. B, Descriptive Sketches. C, Sonnet on Seeing Miss Helen Maria Williams Weep at a Tale of Distress. D, It is a Beauteous Evening Calm and Free. Option C, Sonnet on Seeing Miss Helen Maria Williams Weep at a Tale of Distress, is the right answer. Points to be noted. Sonnet on Seeing Miss Helen Maria Williams Weep at a Tale of Distress is William Wordsworth's debut work, published in 1787, in the volume 11 of European Magazine and London Review. The poem was signed by Axiologus, a Greek-derived pun meaning Wordsworth. Question number 4. Who was the young lady referred to in the poem An Evening Walk by Wordsworth? Option A, Mary Hutchinson. B, Dorothy Wordsworth. C, Annette Vallon. D, Caroline. Option B, Dorothy Wordsworth is the right answer. Points to be noted. Dorothy Wordsworth is the younger sister of Wordsworth for 1 year, to whom he was close all his life. An Evening Walk is a long narrative poem in the form of a letter by Wordsworth addressed to his sister Dorothy. It was published in 1793. The poem is written in heroic couplets. It is based on his observations and memories of the Lake District from his time at school. Question number 5. Who is he referred to in the phrase, just for a handful of silver he left us? Option A, Robert Browning. B, John Ruskin. C, S. T. Coleridge. D, William Wordsworth. Option D, William Wordsworth is the right answer. Points to be noted. The phrase, just for a handful of silver he left us, is from The Lost Leader, a poem by Robert Browning. It was published in his collection of poems Dramatic Romances and Lyrics in 1845. In this poem, Browning criticizes Wordsworth for abandoning his liberal principles for personal gain, such as accepting the position of distributor of stamps in 1813 and the position of poet laureate in 1843 from the government. Question number 6. Which of Wordsworth's Lucy poems begins with, She dwelt among the untrodden ways? Option A, I traveled among unknown men. B, Lucy Gray. C, She dwelt among the untrodden ways. D, 3 years she grew in sun and shower. Option C, She dwelt among the untrodden ways is the right answer. Points to be noted. 4 of the 5 Lucy poems were first published in the second edition of Lyrical Ballads in 1800. The other poem, I Traveled Among Unknown Men, the third of the 5 Lucy poems was first published in Poems, in 2 volumes in 1807. Question number 7. Who described William Wordsworth's poetry as the egotistical sublime? Option A, Robert Browning. B, P. B. Shelley. C, T. S. Eliot. D, John Keats. Option D, John Keats is the right answer. Points to be noted. John Keats coined the term egotistical sublime in 1818 in a letter to Richard Woodhouse. He used it to critique William Wordsworth's self-focused approach with reference to his style of writing poetry. Keats also coined the term negative capability in 1817 in a letter to his brothers, George and Tom. He described Shakespeare as possessing negative capability. Question number 8. Who dismissed Wordsworth's definition of poetry, calling the phrase emotion recollected in tranquility an inexact formula? Option A. Matthew Arnold. B. T.S. Eliot. C. F.R. Leavis. D. I.A. Richards. Option B. T.S. Eliot is the right answer. Points to be noted. T.S. Eliot dismissed Wordsworth's definition of poetry in his essay, Tradition and the Individual Talent, calling Wordsworth's phrase, emotion recollected in tranquility, an inexact formula. Tradition and the Individual Talent is an essay by T.S. Eliot first published in The Egoist in 1919, and later included in his The Sacred Wood, Essays on Poetry and Criticism published in 1920. Eliot states, poetry is not turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion, in this essay in which he advocated for an impersonal approach, where the poet's personality and emotions are not directly expressed but rather remain separate from the poem. Question number 9. Which of the following works is regarded as a manifesto of romantic poetry? Option A. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. B. Preface to the Lyrical Ballads. C. Biographia Literaria. D. The Prelude. Option B. Preface to the Lyrical Ballads is the right answer. Points to be noted. The first edition of Lyrical Ballads, with a few other poems, was published in 1798. It includes The Advertisement, a prose piece that explains that the poems in the collection were experimental. The preface was added to the second edition of Lyrical Ballads, published in 1800. This preface is widely regarded as a manifesto of romantic poetry. It outlines William Wordsworth's principles of poetry, in which he details his ideas for using common, everyday language, a distinct departure from the neoclassical poetry of the 18th century. An appendix, titled Poetic Diction, was added to the third edition of Lyrical Ballads, published in 1802. In this edition, Wordsworth expanded the ideas set forth in the preface. He advocated for the real language of men, believing that poetry could and should be written in the same language used in daily life, accessible to common people, in his Poetic Diction. Question number 10. The quote, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting," is taken from which of Wordsworth's poems? Option A. The Prelude. B. Ode, Intimations of Immortality. C. Resolution and Independence. D. Tintern Abbey. Option B. Ode, Intimations of Immortality is the right answer. Points to be noted. The quote, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting," is taken from William Wordsworth's Ode, Intimations of Immortality, published in the first edition of Poems, in 2 volumes in 1807. The second edition of Poems, in 2 volumes, was published in 1815. The full title of the poem is Ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood, and it reflects on the loss of the vivid spiritual perception of childhood, as one transitions to the more mundane experience of adulthood, mourning this profound loss of innocence. Question number 11. Who succeeded William Wordsworth as Poet Laureate? Option A. Alfred Austin. B. Robert Southey. C. Alfred Lord Tennyson. D. Walter Scott. Option C. Alfred Lord Tennyson is the right answer. Points to be noted. Alfred Lord Tennyson succeeded William Wordsworth as Poet Laureate, and was appointed to the position in 1850 after Wordsworth's death. Henry James Pye served as Poet Laureate from 1790 until his death in 1813. The position was offered to Walter Scott, who declined it, and was then offered to Robert Southey. Southey served from 1813 until his death in 1843, at which point he was succeeded by William Wordsworth. Wordsworth served as Poet Laureate from 1843 until his death in 1850. Question number 12. Who said, "Child is father of the man"? Option A. P.B. Shelley. B. John Keats. C. William Wordsworth. D. S.T. Coleridge. Option C. William Wordsworth is the right answer. Points to be noted. The quote, "The child is father of the man," is from William Wordsworth's poem, My Heart Leaps Up, also known as The Rainbow, which served as an introduction, epigraph, to his longer poem Ode, Intimations of Immortality, published in 1807. The quote is a paradox, a contradictory statement that suggests a person's childhood experiences, character, and emotions significantly shape their adult life and personality. Paradox. A paradox is a statement that appears to contradict itself but may contain a deeper truth. Example: nobody goes to the restaurant because it's too crowded. Question number 13. Which Wordsworth poem has the quotation, Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour? Option A. Resolution and Independence. B. Laodamia. C. I wandered lonely as a cloud. D. London, 1802. Option D. London, 1802 is the right answer. Points to be noted. The quote, Milton thou shouldst be living at this hour, is the opening line of William Wordsworth's poem London, 1802, a Petrarchan sonnet published in 1807, in his Poems in 2 volumes. In this poem, Wordsworth addresses the soul of the 17th-century poet John Milton, urging him to be alive in the current time because England is in dire need of his moral and spiritual guidance. He compares Milton's spirit to natural elements like stars and the sea, highlighting his purity and majesty. Wordsworth pleads with Milton through this poem to return and revitalize the nation with his virtue and poetic power. Question number 14. Match the following works with their years of publication. Option A, B, C, D. Option D is the right answer. Points to be noted. The Prelude was published in 1850. The Excursion was published in 1814. Tintern Abbey was published in 1798. Lyrical Ballads, the second edition, was published in 1800. Descriptive Sketches was published in 1793. Question number 15. Which poem of Wordsworth contains the statement, nature never did betray the heart that loved her? Option A, The Prelude. B, The Tables Turned. C, Tintern Abbey. D, My heart leaps up when I behold. Option C, Tintern Abbey is the right answer. Points to be noted. The quote, nature never did betray the heart that loved her, is found in Wordsworth's poem, Tintern Abbey, published in 1798. It is written in blank verse and is often referred to by its full title, Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour. Wordsworth first visited the Abbey in August 1793, and returned with his sister Dorothy 5 years later to write the poem, where she is referred to as friend throughout the poem. Question number 16. Who was the first to criticize Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction? Option A, Matthew Arnold. B, S.T. Coleridge. C, T.S. Eliot. D, William Hazlitt. Option B, S.T. Coleridge is the right answer. Points to be noted. S.T. Coleridge was the first to criticize William Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction in his Biographia Literaria, a critical autobiography published in 2 volumes in 1817. Wordsworth added an appendix on poetic diction to the 3rd edition of the Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1802. In this appendix, he argues that poetry should use the real language of men and that there is no essential difference between the language of prose and poetry. Coleridge, on the other hand, argued that poetic language requires imaginative selection and elevation above ordinary speech, and that the language of rustics is too limited to express varied human experiences. Question number 17. Who was the critic who dismissed William Wordsworth's The Excursion with the words, "This will never do"? Option A, Matthew Arnold. B, Francis Jeffrey. C, T.S. Eliot. D, J.G. Lockhart. Option B, Francis Jeffrey is the right answer. Points to be noted. This will never do is the opening line of Francis Jeffrey's Review of the Excursion, a poem by William Wordsworth published in 1814. Jeffrey thought that Wordsworth, in his pursuit of a specific poetic style, wavered between silliness and pathos. The review appeared in the November 1814 issue of the Edinburgh Review magazine, started on October 10, 1802. While Sidney Smith edited the first issue, Jeffrey was the first permanent editor of the magazine. Question number 18. Who called a child best philosopher, mighty prophet, seer blessed? Option A, S.T. Coleridge. B, P.B. Shelley. C, William Wordsworth. D, Alfred Tennyson. Option C, William Wordsworth is the right answer. Points to be noted. The words mentioned above are found in Ode, Intimations of Immortality, published in his Poems in 2 volumes in 1807. The poem was written in 11 stanzas. The child referred to in this poem is said to be Hartley Coleridge, son of St. Coleridge. The poem, Ode, Intimations of Immortality, reflects on the transition from the vivid spiritual perception of childhood to the more mundane experience of adulthood. The poem mourns the loss of innocence. Question number 19. Who is the speaker of the words, "Classicism is health, and Romanticism is disease"? Option A, William Wordsworth. B, William Godwin. C, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. D, Matthew Arnold. Option C, Goethe is the right answer. Points to be noted. The quote is recorded for the first time in the Conversations of Goethe, published in 1836 in German by Johann Peter Eckermann. The first English translation of this work was published in 1839 by the American critic Margaret Fuller. It reflects Goethe's view that the classical tradition represents a form of literary and cultural health and balance, while Romanticism, with its emphasis on intense emotion and the individual, represented a kind of sickness or disease. Question number 20. Who does she refer to in Wordsworth's poem, "She Was a Phantom of Delight"? Option A, Annette Vallon. B, Dorothy Wordsworth. C, Mary Hutchinson. D, Dora. Option C, Mary Hutchinson is the right answer. Points to be noted. She Was a Phantom of Delight is a 3-stanza poem about his wife, Mary Hutchinson. It was published in the first volume of Poems in 2 volumes in 1807. The second volume of Poems in 2 volumes was published in 1815.